man, I hate coming down here to this boiler room. It's so dark and dingy. Ugh. Hello again. Welcome to another Regal Mystery Movie Review. Today's movie played on March 25th, 2024. And the movie was Sting. Charlotte is a rebellious 12-year-old girl who finds a tiny spider in her rundown apartment building. She keeps it in a jar, but it soon starts to grow at a monstrous rate and develop an insatiable appetite for blood. As her neighbors begin to disappear, Charlotte and her family find themselves in a desperate fight for their lives against a ravenous arachnid with a taste for human flesh.
Rated R.
I'm happy to report that Sting is actually an unreleased movie. The main star of this movie is Charlotte, played by Aaliyah Brown. Aaliyah plays the angsty preteen exceptionally well. She showed a lot of emotion in her portrayal. You could really feel her confidence, her fear, and her sadness. Unfortunately, some of the dialogue was a little too forced to be effective. The other main character is Ethan, the stepdad, played by Ryan Core. His performance is okay. Sometimes he felt like a real person, and sometimes he felt like a script read. He's trying to connect with his stepdaughter, Charlotte, but he keeps doing dumb things to push her away, for no real reason other than to chip the movie plot forward. Most of the other characters were all very one-dimensional. Charlotte's mother, Heather, was just kind of there to push forward the family drama, but she didn't do that very well. You have the mean aunt who owns the building, but is rude to everybody inside, the nerdy and reclusive weirdo neighbor, the lonely but beautiful widowed neighbor, and the too real to exist exterminator who lobs quips and one-liners at an astounding pace. Now, there is the minor character of Grandmom Helga. She's the mother to Heather, grandmother to Charlotte, and the sister for the mean aunt Gunther. Very early in the movie, it's established that Helga has some type of memory disorder, either Alzheimer's or dementia. My issue with this sweet character is how she's used, intentionally or unintentionally. Helga's the one who calls the exterminators because she hears noises in her walls. While she's on the phone with the exterminator, they ask her name and her address. And this is when the camera pans to show us index cards that are on the wall next to her phone. One says, "Hello, my name is Helga," and the other one says, "My address is this." Now, this is because Helga, the character, has memory issues. But for some reason, the audience thought this was really funny. And I don't know why. When the exterminator came to the apartment building, Helga couldn't remember ever calling him. And again, the audience laughed. When Helga doesn't recognize her daughter, the audience laughs. I was just so confused why people would find these things funny. I don't think that seeing someone struggle with memory issues is inherently funny. Now, there were a few instances where her lines were supposed to be funny, and that's fine. Please, laugh at that. I just found the laughter at her personal struggles to be really off-putting, and I don't know if that was the intention of the filmmakers or not. Visually, this movie is just too dark. The movie takes place over the course of several days. We are shown daytime outside very often. Even some characters are outside at one point. But inside, it is always dark. It's like everyone in the building has those blackout curtains to keep the sun out. I guess this could have been done to create a sense of tension and fear, but the only thing it did for me was make things harder to see. Plus, I kind of feel like it threw off the pacing of the movie, because when it's always nighttime, it's hard to tell when things are happening in real time. There is also a really big focus on the winter storm that is occurring outside. We see and hear news reports of how it's a once-in-a-lifetime type of storm. Yet the exterminators are able to get to the building perfectly fine and have no trouble finding a parking spot in the snow-covered city. The special effects for the movie were fine for being a smaller budget film. The animation of the spider looked pretty good. It was a mix of CGI and puppetry. The visuals of the giant spider reminded me of the classic creature feature films where humans would be fighting off those giant ants. Some of the close-ups looked a little stiff. The smaller version of the spider looked pretty good, and its movements were very fluid. One of the details of this added spider is that it mimics sounds. It began with mimicking a cell phone chime and whistle. This is how Charlotte would call it to see if it was ready to eat. Later, it would use this ability to mimic sound to trap its prey. The sound effects of this mimicry were well done, and had just enough distortion to let the audience know that it's the spider. Aside from the alien spider wreaking havoc on this apartment building, there was also a bunch of melodramatic family drama, a major weak point for me. Charlotte and her family are living for free in this apartment building, which is owned by their aunt, as long as Ethan, the stepdad, remains the handyman. Charlotte's real dad is a deadbeat, but this information is kept from her by her mom and stepdad. And of course, the stepdad and mother have a new child together. Much of this family tension just feels artificial and inflated. 90% of any of this fighting could have been avoided if they just had a 5-minute conversation with each other. Just talk to your loved ones. It's that simple. I think that some of this drama could have been solved a bit earlier in the movie, and the movie would have been better off for it. Contrived and pointless drama is overdone, and it's not my thing. The plot of the movie is very familiar, with no surprises along the way. The final confrontation and ending of the movie is completely spoiled within the first 15 minutes of the film. Don't worry, I won't spoil it for you. The audience is shown a lingering specialty shot on something very specific, and this very forcibly foreshadows the final altercation of the movie. The family resolution also felt boring and predictable. Throw in the mandatory cliffhanger stinger, pun intended, and you have all the trappings of a very generic and average horror film. The idea of a killer spider isn't anything new, but it does have a lasting fear factor. The movie preys on the aversion that many people have to things that skitter and crawl, especially insects and spiders. The movie plays on those fears very well by showing the spider crawl on and into people. The audience was most vocal during those type of scenes. But unfortunately, once the spider grew, those type of scenes disappeared. The kills in the movie were a mixed bag. In the beginning, the kills were very promising. We got to see these spooky death scenes that made the audience gasp and recoil. But unfortunately, that didn't last. As the movie went on and the spider got bigger, the kills became less seen and more implied. And at the same time, the visuals got even darker. We, the audience, had to rely on sounds and quick camera cuts to try to piece together what was happening on the screen. I do think this might have something to do with budget constraints, because it is a lot more expensive to animate a large spider attacking people than it is a small one. There's also some continuity issues with the spider's biology. We're told that it injects digestive enzymes into its victims to help break down their insides so they're easier to eat while they're alive. But this doesn't seem to affect certain victims who are captured and then are later on perfectly fine, when in reality their insides should have been full of mush. Now, of course, this spider is from outer space, so its biological behavior may not conform to our earthly standards. Overall, Sting is a very standard horror film that can't quite keep a hold of its creativity as the story progresses. The audience did seem to have a good time with it, though. Personally, I think it was fine for a one-time viewing, but it is definitely not the start of a new franchise. And that is why I'm giving Sting a sticky 6 out of 10. The web that the filmmakers weaved just wasn't strong enough to hold up the plot. So, did you see the Regal mystery movie horror edition of Sting? If so, burst out of your cocoon and leave me a comment down below. And please use your 8 legs to like, comment, and subscribe for more creepy crawly content just like this. Web you later.